The most devastating humanitarian and displacement crisis in the world. That's the alarm being sounded by the United Nations. Killings, rapes, and famine affecting millions of people. Now that number translates to the entire population of Australia, and it's probably more. I'm talking about Sudan. But why isn't the world? I'm Stefanie Dekker, and this is The Stream. Now, Sudan's devastating war is entering its third year, and the conflict is far from over. Violence has escalated across the country, and civilians are being massacred and forced to flee. What's going to happen to the people of Sudan if things don't change? And why is this crisis being mostly ignored by the international community? Well, if you haven't been following this crisis, our producer Sina Khalil will get you up to speed.
It all started with a youth-led revolution in 2019, which brought down Sudan's longtime president, Omer Elbashir. A transitional civilian government was then put in place, but 2 years later, that was overthrown by the military. Tensions began rising between Sudan's top two generals, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, over plans to merge forces. And things came to a head on April 15, 2023, when fighting erupted in the capital. Since then, both sides have been battling for control over territories across the country. And of course, civilians are the ones paying the heaviest price. At least 14 million people have been displaced inside and outside of Sudan. Up to 150,000 people are estimated to have been killed. More than 25 million are facing crisis-level hunger conditions, and nearly 15 million Sudanese are in need of urgent medical care. The scale of these numbers are hard to grasp when you see them, but each one of these figures represents a life that's been forever changed.
Now joining us today to discuss Sudan are political affairs analyst Elbashir Idris from Cardiff in the UK, activist and poet Bayadir Mohamed-Osman, she is in New York City, and Omer Elnaiem, head of UNHCR's Global Content Hub in Africa, who is joining us from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start, Elbashir and Omer, we had both of you on the show in August of last year. You were talking about, you were sounding the alarms, you were asking the world not to ignore this crisis, you were warning what was going to happen to the people of Sudan if nothing changed. Elbashir, let me start with you. What do you have to say now, almost a year later, when, you know, things are probably worse?
Well, just like you said, Omer and I, and even Bayadir, have been ringing alarm bells since ever since this war broke out 757 days ago, and that just shows on how much that we're paying attention to it. But the rest of the world really doesn't, and because of that, it's really created a sense of contempt within many Sudanese circles and beyond that, in terms of the international community, their response, their plan, and also the way that they're supposed to do this by rules, by justice, by the very things of code of conduct that we do not see in this world anymore. And because of that, it's left a lot of people disenfranchised. It's led to the world's worst humanitarian crisis ever recorded. 150,000 dead was actually the number that was said last year by the US Special Envoy in Congress. What about now? We're probably looking at 500,000. And this isn't just deaths by bullets alone. We're talking starvation, we're talking famine, we're talking diseases. And the rest of the world really has not batted an eye, really. And it really does show the disdain disdain either on the Sudanese people or on those who are oppressed, really, not only in Sudan, but many places around the world. But it really shows that maybe, unfortunately, after 1 year, that the world isn't just not caring about Sudan, it's completely ignoring it, and it's trying to put it underneath its carpet. But what we've seen and what we've learned, and seeing the amazing bravery and heroics and the humanity of the Sudanese and of the Sudanese people and allies, even if the rest of the world doesn't know what to do, it's clear that the Sudanese people do. And if the rest of the world doesn't seem to have a moral backbone, I'm sure they can learn something from the Sudanese.
Bayadir, I want to put that to you. I was listening to your pre-interview with our producer, Sina, where you were saying that at the age of 7, you were protesting in front of the United Nations with your family. And now, almost 20 years later, you were still doing the same, a different form of protest. Give our viewers a sense of, you are a dual national Sudanese American. What has it done to your identity? How do you feel that 20 years on, it's still not solved?
It has completely shaped my entire identity in terms of my career choices, my financial choices, my family choices. We were literally uprooted due to the Bashir regime when in early 2000 because my father was also fighting against these figures, and in 20 years later, I am still fighting the same battle he is, and that is not something that is not the heirloom that I wanted to get passed down to me. And unfortunately, we are here 30 years later, still fighting the same fight, still talking about the same issues of tribalism, about imperialism, colonialism. It's the same people who are showing up and who are devastating our homes. And unfortunately, it's something that's going to get passed down to my little cousins who recently also were displaced to 6 different locations before they were able to finally find safety in the US. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a heirloom that keeps getting passed down and a cycle that is not ending because we're not actually speaking about the main root causes of what's going on. And that's my issue. We keep talking about the puppets. We keep talking about the leaf on the outside, but there are root causes that we need to address. And those include imperialism, greed, and also how this is a complete proxy war. This isn't just a Sudanese people problem. It's not a civil war of us just choosing to completely destroy our homes. There are other hands in the side of this pots, and unfortunately, they are the ones involved in our demise.
Yes, you wrote, actually, you said the war has been framed as a group of Africans just going at it again, whereas actually this is a proxy war. I want to get into a proxy war just a little later. Omer, let me go to you because you've just returned from Chad, if I understand correctly. Chad, of course, a place where so many Sudanese have fled to. Can you give our viewers a sense of what you saw and what people are telling you?
Thank you, Stefanie. I think the most important thing to mention is that what I witnessed is both devastating and urgent. The war still rages on. People are still fleeing. Just in the past few weeks, more than 20,000 people crossed into Chad. And don't forget that 800,000 Sudanese refugees have arrived in Chad since the crisis has started. I met mothers who don't know how to explain to their children that their home is no longer home. I saw children carrying other children across the border with nothing but plastic bags with all that they have and with all that they can bring with them. I met mothers who left their husbands and sons behind because they were afraid that they might get stopped on the way and then the men will get either killed or try to be recruited. What is very important to keep in mind is that the war is still taking place and people are fleeing every day in neighboring countries and being displaced inside Sudan. The stories that I heard, that infrastructure is destroyed, there's no more schools, there's no hospital. Sudan as we know it is no longer there. It doesn't exist anymore. And what's really important to keep in mind that we need to put all the pressures that we can, and the international community needs to take this very seriously to put pressure on the warring parties to stop immediately and for the guns to be put down. It breaks my heart that I'm repeating exactly what Bashir and I said a year ago. It's almost we're back in time, but now the situation is worse because the funding situation is even more dramatic than it was before. And what is happening now is that the Sudanese people are the people that suffer and continue to suffer.
That's it, isn't it? These horror stories and the mass numbers that seem to not really translate to any international action. Actually, online, we've seen this sentiment quite often. This is from X, and it reads, trying to raise awareness about Sudan is like talking into a void. Nobody seems to care about the starving children or the innocent people being brutally executed by the RSF on a daily basis. Now, the war, of course, 2 sides, so many dead, so many displaced. Why is there no international outrage or reaction? Elbashir, I'll go straight to you. Is it because the Sudanese simply don't matter enough as others? Like, how would you describe it? Don't hold back. Like, how do you feel? Why isn't there international outrage?
This is an international conspiracy done by the global order that seems to be working together against the Sudanese people. What do I mean by that? Well, Amnesty has just released a report that Chinese-made weapons that have been sent to the UAE, that have been sent to the RSF, has been revealed. What is with a Chinese weapon being dealt with and being found in Sudan that has been there through UAE arms? What are US American javelins doing in Sudan? What are Bulgarian weapons and ammos doing there? It seems like the world really has come together, not for the saviorship of Sudan or its people, but more so to really extend this war. And they've done this without no proper analysis, no proper conduct or care for the lives of Sudanese people. They must see Sudanese people as some sort of throwaway life that they've always been used to the matters of war, which is the most incorrect and horrible thing. And at this point, we're seeing more of a direction towards violence when we really could have. And the international community could have sat down and realized just on how this much violence has led to mass radicalization within the Sudanese youth inside and outside of the country, moving towards to picking up arms when they could have made plans to move this militarized state of mind into civil defense roles. The difference between a humanitarian and a soldier is one that carries a gun, but they both have the same mental, if not even humanitarian would have a more mental, agile and physical tests. That means there's a lot of those within the Sudanese youth right now with arms who've picked up, who would actually be the local responders and savers if they wanted to save their country, if they wanted to rebuild it back up. But the international community will not allow that. They would rather see more guns and weapons being
Why is that? Why can we break it down? Bayadir, let me put this to you. Why is there seem to be, you talked about a proxy war, there seem to be a lot of external players on the ground, interested, invested. Why is that? Why are they interested in Sudan? Why won't they let it go?
Yes. So to simply put it, our blood is only worth anything when it's converted into oil, when it's converted into gold. One US dollar is what, 80, 90 pounds in Sudan. And how much is a Sudanese body equivalent to a white one? These are some of the lines I have in my poetry when I'm describing the issues going on. Our Sudanese people are only seen as transferable goods, and our land is being exploited for the needs of others. So I'm at the point of when I'm discussing this war, I'm no longer saying, why is the world silent? But why is the world so invested in the destruction of my country and stealing and exploitation of my lands without complete any regards to human rights or any regards to international rights? So that is where I'm at when I'm discussing this, because as my colleague and my good friend Elbashir has just said, this is an entire international proxy war. There are so many different countries and players who have put their hand in the pots, and not for the sake of saving us anymore, for the sake of just completely blurring lines and completely exploiting Sudanese people. And I'm discussing Arabic oil, also gum Arabic, golds. A lot of our land is worth so much, and so is our people, and so is the location. It's very strategic. So, and I would like to reframe the conversation is, why is Sudan so valuable and Sudanese people are not?
Omer, let me ask you, why is the Sudan so valuable? Why are the people not? Aid cuts, you mentioned it there, has already been an issue now with more US aid cuts. You are humanitarian. How does that affect the people on the ground? And try and translate it to our audience. Like Bayadir was saying, you know, a black life isn't the same value as a white life. The world seemed to respond to Ukraine in a very, very different way.
So let me put it in terms of numbers and facts. So the Sudan refugee response plan for 2025 has only met 10% of its budget, and we are in May. The impact of these cuts are visible in every corner of the response, not just for UNHCR, but across the humanitarian world. As our High Commissioner said, this is not just a funding shortfall, this is a crisis of responsibility. The cost of inaction will be measured in suffering, instability, and loss of future. I want to mention a high school that I went and visited when I was in Chad, Al-Farshana High School, where Sudanese refugee boys and girls go to get their high school diplomas, right? Linking back to the point of Al-Bashir in terms of what is about the young people and what are their options when they don't have classrooms anymore. The school funding stopped back in January. The teachers who are refugees themselves continue to teach, continue to be educators, so the kids don't go to the dark options. Let me talk about what are these dark options. What is going to happen to high school seniors that they can't graduate and they can't work because there is no possibilities? And don't forget, the host countries already are going through their own economical situation, challenges, and they're not rich countries. So what's going to happen to Mohammed, who I met, who's meant to graduate next year and loves math and wants to be an engineer? What are these options that he has? Either he tries to work in the gold mine because he needs to earn an income, or he makes the deadly journey through Libya to the Mediterranean to try to cross to Europe. What I also find quite important to shed a light on, that Sudan is not just a Sudan crisis for Sudan and neighboring country, but this, if not dealt with quite soon, will be a regional and a global security issue as well. So when people talk about funding, I would want them to link it to a bigger picture, not just that, hey, this is some funding that we give to some country far away. It's not just a moral responsibility, but it also a stability element that is quite important for donor countries to keep in mind.
I want to ask the question, can we affect change? Bayadir, your poetry, I was listening to it, so powerful, so moving. You've all been sounding the alarm, and others. Even if you have a massive following online, can we affect change? Can we make the powerful change course in Sudan? Or, I mean, we have to ask this question, you know, we need to be hopeful, but is it something that's possible, or is it simply impossible? Elbashir, I'll go to you for that.
I am the last person to ask such a question. It is absolutely possible, and there is no other choice but to go forward with this. Even if the rest of the world does not blink an eye, then we will create a new humanitarian aid and mission and purpose. And what the Sudanese in Sudan have been doing, just normal, average, ordinary civilians, and just trying to get through this nightmare for the past 2 years, the rest of the world doesn't even begin to comprehend the way that the Sudanese have responded. And if anything, if the rest of the world were to go into a crisis just like Sudan would, I promise you, they would look at the blueprint of the civilians and the way they've managed, and still through impossible odds. And it's still not fully flourishing, unfortunately, due to the conditions of this war. But the resilience of it, it can absolutely be done. But at the same time, that passion, that energy, would it be seen within leaders, within the world leaders of the world? Unfortunately, I do not think so. What we have are a world of sycophants, unfortunately, and those who actually do have the passion to try and see humanity, especially for those in Sudanese, to flourish. Then we will do that ourselves. And if the rest of the world doesn't believe in us, then they can watch.
We will do that ourselves. That reminds me of the emergency response rooms. Bayadir, I want to put this to you. For those of you who don't know, this is sort of community, correct me if I'm wrong, community organizing, helping themselves at community level in Sudan, because of course there is very little help, if anything. Describe to me the resilience, you know, moving forward. You are an activist, you're a poet. Like, how do you see things moving forward for you to affect change? Do you ever get disheartened?
Definitely. I definitely get disheartened, but then I remember my responsibility to my Sudanese community. And as Elbashir had noted, that my leaders, my mentors in this are those who are on the ground, the mutual aid responders, the frontline responders, the youth who have completely sacrificed their entire well-being, their safety. And I'm talking about the youth who had to have dropped out of school, who are now taking care of not just their families, but their entire neighborhoods. They're doing evacuation plans. They're helping with health hygiene kits. They're helping with food kitchens. They're doing work that's the work of the UN, as just teenagers, as just young youth, without resources, without recognition. And most likely they are facing extreme harassment from both sides of the regime. And they're also the women who are also experiencing sexual violence and are being exposed to sexual slavery and so many other horrific things. So that is who I believe are the leaders of this movement. I believe they are the ones I am responsible to support, and they are the ones that I hold myself accountable to. I've recognized the United, all of these global agencies who have honestly failed Sudan. I now take my lead and my command from the youth who are doing the incredible work in innovative ways. And emergency response rooms are just one example of that, but they are really the backbone of what's keeping Sudan right now. As many people alive and just completely surviving as how they are. They're doing incredible work. There's thousands of youth all over. But unfortunately, as we noticed, because of budget cuts, a lot of them have been cut. 80% of the food kitchens have been cut due to the US aid cuts. But honestly, these youth are what I strive for. They are my mentors, they are my leaders. And if they can do it, I have no excuse.
You mentioned there are global agencies who failed Sudan. The UN put out a report recently talking about rape as a weapon of war, talking about children as young as 1, girls and boys being raped in this conflict. How can the world not react to something like that? Omer, I'm going to put that to you.
I met a wonderful 13-year-old boy named Mustafa on my last trip to Chad. And after we sort of had the interview, that was basically about what he wants to do when he grows up and his kind of like dreams. So as I'm leaving, he looks at me and he says, "Are you going to save Sudan?" And I didn't really know what to tell him. So I just sort of looked at him and I said, "Yes, we're all doing our best, not just us," because he sees me in the vest. And then, of course, he sees that this is the UN and the UN can just sort of stop things. But as your guest mentioned, this is not just one responsibility for one side or one actor. What's happening in Sudan needs a collective response. But what gives me inspiration is every refugee who I met that wants to go back to Sudan and rebuild. Sudan is not over. Sudan is not forgotten by its people, and it should not be abandoned by the world. I think with the word now, last year I spoke about not being forgotten and reminding the world of what's happening to us and our people. But today, my message is about abandonment. I want to tell Mustafa that, yes, the world is not going to stand by and let Sudan disappear. We need to do something before the damage is completely done, and we need to collectively save Sudan, the sons and daughters of Sudan at first, and these are the people who are really making that change now, but also the international community and organizations and the world that also have a responsibility. What's important to remember is the collective responsibility of dealing with what's happening in Sudan. And that's really my message here is.
Yes, sorry for interrupting. We're running out of time, but yes, that is a very powerful message, the collective responsibility. Bayadir, just a quick final thought from you as well before I ask Elbashir. We're going to have to get the show to close. We're running out of time, unfortunately.
Yes, my final thought is honestly, there are so many action steps that individuals can take. And I hope this segment or our conversation today sparks that in everyone's households and the office. There are so many petitions, there's fundraisers, there is events, there is rallies, there is concerts, there are art. So much that individuals can do for this cause. There are letters, templates that you can send to your elected officials. So that's the point I'm at right now. As much as I want to, as much as we've shared the facts and the data and our feelings, there is real action that needs to be taken. And we are beyond the point of saying I don't know what to do. The information is out there. The resources are out there. The activists are out there who have been on speaking about this issue. We are not trying to speak for the voiceless. We are literally just passing them the mic.
Elbashir, very briefly, what's your message 1 year on being back on the show?
Well, now the time is for the generation of now to take control and to take lead. We're not waiting the world's worst humanitarian crisis for those without a moral responsibility to come and step forward. There are many of those after 757 days of seeing the worst horrors, as you heard from Omer and Bayadir, that they want to step forward. They have a lot of energy with them, and they want to see national recovery, not just for themselves, and their families, but for everybody. And as Bayadir says, the resources are there, the networks are there. Can we do something now to start thinking a bit more nuanced and a bit more differently to try and end the world's worst humanitarian crisis?
Thank you so much for joining us on the stream, Elbashir, Bayadir and Omer. That was a very strong discussion. Let's hope the world listens. And thank you for being part of the conversation, and I'll see you soon.